I'm Benjamin Hall, and I'm searching for heroes. Well, welcome back, and thank you very much for joining us today. We have a great guest on today, Dr. Sonja Stribling, and she is someone who, like many of our guests, have gone through things which were very, very difficult. You know, she was the youngest of 12 children. She was pregnant at 15. She was raped, left for dead at 17. But she then went to college and went on to serve 21 years in the military, serving in Iraq. That was difficult as well when she left, and she had some difficult times with a very bad divorce, but she picked herself up and she decided one day that she wanted to go and make the world better and help people get through the difficult times. And that is what she's doing. And she's just written an amazing book called From the Battlefield to the Boardroom, The Infinite Desire to Win. She talks to thousands of people around America. She has created an incredible company, and she was just a prime example of someone who never let the dark times get them down, but has turned them round and made something wonderful out of it. So thank you for joining us today. And here's Dr. Sonja. I'm so grateful that you can join us today. And, you know, I have been looking at so many of the videos you do. I have been reading through your book, and I can just tell you that you send such a clear message of resilience. And I just wonder how you can keep that going all the time. It seems like you have endless energy.
Wow, that's a great question. I get asked that all the time. I do believe what I've been able to do, because it hasn't always been that way, right? In my childhood and all of that. But I just start looking at the world in where I want to see it. And that is peace and happiness and harmony. So that's what I see. So I wake up like this. My husband will tell you that. I wake up like this. I go to sleep like this. So keeping it going is just making sure I'm in the right environment and around the right people that can keep this going for sure.
It's interesting because I mean, I have found that, you know, you have moments in life, you have ups and you have downs, and keeping it going, to try and keep it going all the time, that becomes very hard. But so do you also say that it's okay to have ups and downs? It mustn't always be positive.
Absolutely. I mean, just think about it. If life were perfect, in a perfect situation, which there aren't any, it's always an upbeat. But when I mean keeping it going is just keeping what it is that I want to see to happen. But there are times when, you know, you get sad, you know, you think about something. But one of the things that I do, Benjamin, for everyone is I started thinking about what just happened for me to feel that way, especially if it's a low and it happens. More than likely, I got an email from someone, or I got a text message, or my sons need something. It's always pulling on mommy. And so I'll think about that. But for the most part, when those times are happening, there is a reason and there's a cause. And just I'm looking at now, but before, when I was in this place, when I came back from Iraq and just thinking through what was happening, it was a lot of low moments. There was no thought of the positivity. It was always, man, this is how my life is. It's never going to change. That in itself really took me to a deep, dark place, if I can be very transparent and honest about that.
Yeah. And, you know, I've spoken to a number of people who have found it quite difficult once they leave the military to segue back into the, you know, into the real world, so to speak, the non-military world. And they find those moments really difficult. And look, you served 21 years. You served in Iraq. You have been at the front, and you must share those feelings. You must understand how difficult that is. How long were you feeling bad for? How hard was it until you found that click? You found the way to get forward?
I would say even before I retired, after 21 years, I started to feel it probably within the first 6 months after returning back from Iraq. And I knew when I came back, I was just different. I mean, when you go to places like that to combat and you're able to see some things that are transpiring, whether you see it visually or it's on paper, because at one point when I was in Iraq, I was a battle captain, which means I was responsible for reporting all of the personnel that were downrange in our FOB. Our area, our base per se. And we're talking about 63,000 people. And on a daily basis, I'm reporting KIA, which is killed in action, MIA, missing in action, and knowing the names and getting visuals, because we have to see images of them. That plays a toll, or that takes you on a place. And it wasn't just me, it was the soldiers and the military personnel that were working with me on this. So that in itself, just seeing that day in and day out, and just knowing or just thinking you may not make it home. You're praying, of course, like, let me get home to my family, but there was no guarantee that you're going to make it home, especially when you are in that area. And I just remember coming home for about 6 months, noises, like the backfire of a car, you just freaking out on everything that you hear. And it was a thing, but it was a thing as a senior leader we didn't talk about. It was an unwritten rule that you're not supposed to talk about those things. It is what it is. It happens. You're home per se safely. At least my body came home, but mentally and emotionally, I didn't come home. So for the first 6 months, I'm trying to acclimate back to society. We are not driving while you're there per se. And so now you're driving, you are out, there's noises around you. And I just remember it happening. I started to have anxiety attacks, and I didn't really understand what was happening, because in my mind, I was playing the role. We're not supposed to deal with this. Everybody else is, but not as a senior officer. You're not supposed to. And then after a while, I started to notice something's not right. And the blessing for me is that when I came back from Iraq, I went to a unit that we were dealing with those that were coming back from combat. And I was the second senior person in charge. So I had the back door to the doctors and the nurses and the therapists and all of that. Thank goodness, because they helped me understand what was taking place.
It's interesting because I wonder, I'm not sure I've thought about it, but in a leadership role, you certainly can't show any weakness. It is your very purpose to show everyone else to how to be strong. And I wonder, maybe that's just as hard in a sense, because more than anything, you have to try and hide how you're feeling.
Oh, yes. And it wasn't just me. I noticed that a lot of senior enlisted and officers were going through the same thing. But once I couldn't ignore it anymore. I couldn't ignore anxiety attacks that just happened. First, it started out once a week, and then it went to twice a week, and then it started happening every day. At that point, I can't ignore it. I got to talk to somebody about it. And then I found myself going through some other tragic things in my life, but it took about 3 to 5 years, if I'm very honest about that, before I really got a handle on what was happening and understanding, the suicidal thoughts and all of those things. They were just appearing. You're like, what is wrong with me? It's like your phone's being unplugged and there's no juice or there's no power going to the phone. So it's losing energy to it. And that's exactly what was happening to me. And I needed to charge. I needed to be plugged in. I needed the therapy. I needed the help. I needed all of that. But it took years just for me to admit what was happening, because I fought it every tooth and nail. But after a while, I couldn't hide it. And that was one of the biggest reasons why I retired, because the military doesn't really have that space in place. They do more so now, but back then they didn't.
I mean, when you were going through it, were you aware at the time of how bad it was, or were you just fighting every single moment to get through? And is it only looking back that you sort of realize how bad it was?
Oh, yeah, it was pretty bad. It was bad. And again, it didn't help that, I came back and was going through a divorce shortly after that. And I went through bankruptcy, lost a lot of things because, they told us we could stay in one area. So I'm dealing with lifing at that time. And I'm a mom. And at the time, I'm a wife. And I'm still in active duty military. And I'm responsible for a unit. So it was a bit much to deal with. And instead of trying to balance everything, because I hear people say, well, how do you balance that? I couldn't. Only thing I could do was harmonize what is the priority at the time. And for the longest time, I put myself on the back burner. Oh, I'll be okay. Oh, they'll prescribe medication for it. And after a while, it's like, I can't be walking around as a zombie. And so I found myself in this place, in this space where I had to come to grips with either you're going to continue to live like this or you're not going to be living at all. And I didn't want to do either. I didn't want to take my own life, to be honest with you. I didn't want to be on medication. So it was a lot of work that I had to do. And people say resiliency. I say endurance, because I had to endure all of that and still be a mom and still be responsible for people. So behind the curtain, I was dealing with me. In front, I had to pretend to be okay, and I was not okay.
Yeah, I wonder if in life it's about recognizing that there are things which you cannot stop doing. Family, things at home, they don't stop. And maybe it's about trying to organize which is which. But look, you didn't just, for you, it wasn't just about getting through the dark times. You went further. you took what had happened and you have gone on to create something great about it. So where did that happen? Where did the change from I'm going to get myself better to now I want to help other people get better? When did that change happen?
I just got this like epiphany one day. And I remember literally sitting on, people say suicide bed. I was on a suicide couch. Like at that point, my son is at school. My youngest son was in middle school. My middle son was in college playing college football. I had my oldest son who was in Arkansas. And I was like, I can't live like this. It was just so much pulling and it was draining. And I was exhausted of trying to figure this out. At this point, I'm retired now, but I'm still trying to figure out life, trying to figure out who I was going to be when I grew up, right? And I just didn't know. And I was getting a handle, but it was not enough. And I just remember that day, it's like, you know, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And because I'm a woman of faith, I made a decision. Okay, like, look, you got to figure out something. You cannot leave your children behind. That was the saving grace for me. It was thinking about my children. And so at that day, I made a vow. It's like, okay, if I'm going to live, I'm not going to live like this. So how do I take the focus off of me and what I'm going through? And that was the day I made a decision that I was going to start helping other people through their tragic or their moments in their time. And I chose an area of divorce coaching. Didn't even know much about it, but I knew I'd been through a horrible divorce and I didn't want anyone else to go through it. And didn't know that that was the thing that was going to save my life. And I really went to this place and space. So I stopped thinking about me. And that was one of the biggest things that I learned through this entire thing. When I stop focusing on myself and start focusing on who else can I help based on what I've been through, be able to shine some light on some things that I've done and give them some action steps that I took. I wasn't perfect at the time, but I knew I was a step ahead of some people that were still going through their life. And it was happening. And so I made a vow that I was going to help others. And the next thing I know, I look up and within a couple of years, I built $1 million company and didn't understand what I had done. But it wasn't just the income or the revenue that was generating. I felt better. I was looking for that person who was suicidal. I was looking for the person that, was a mom, but didn't want to be here. And she began to really, I wouldn't say disappear, but that voice in my head began to get smaller. And the bigger voice was, hey, you can do this. You can help some other people. And so that was a turning point when I made a decision. It was no longer just about me. Who else can I help that I could be a couple of steps ahead? And the next thing I know, I'm building a coaching and consulting business where I get to travel the world and speak and train and coach and do those things. So that's the thing that really turned it around for me.
More of our conversation right after this. And I know that you focus on helping others, and I suppose it must be very different, helping yourself because, you're trying to find your own path. You're trying to figure out who you are. It's very different from trying to help someone else who perhaps you don't know. And so how do you find that? How do you come up with the key messages to people who you might not know well? Like, is there just like a general sense of resilience, or do you need to know something about them?
No, not necessarily. It's not that I know them. It's just more of me sharing my story, right? Wherever I go, I get the opportunity. I believe a story gets you in the door, right? People are listening closely to see how relevant is it to their life. They need to know or give them hope that, hey, I went through this. And if you're going through this, these are some of the things I did to come out. And that gave me the opportunity to travel and speak and train and do those things. So it wasn't that I had to know them per se, but I knew what I went through. And if they were anywhere in that area, these are some of the things that I did. These are some of the things that I was able to, strap my boots back on and get out there and not just be resilient, but to endure. So it's not necessarily that I need to know who they are. I believe it's more important for them to know what I've been through and be able to share and give them some actionable steps to take for their own life. Yeah.
I wonder if you have to have gone, because I was injured in Ukraine, I'm on prosthetic legs, and I just felt that I learned a fair amount after that. And I wonder if some of the people I speak to, they've gone through almost the worst. And that is when they figure out their resilience. Do you think that sometimes you don't know you have resilience, or you don't see it unless you've been knocked down? And so that might be hard for some people. And it's strange that perhaps you get stronger people once they have been to the bottom and they've come up again.
It is not that I think, is that I know that you really don't know how much power you possess until you go through something. It's not just shown because life is great. It is shown when you go through something. Just think about what you've been able to do to start such a powerful movement not just a podcast, but you get to share the stories of people who go from their zero to their hero or whatever the case may be. And so just imagine, you probably would have never thought about doing what you do right now until that thing happened to you. Before it's like, hey, I'll just go do this. And now you're doing this because now you start to really, I believe, find out what your true purpose is in life. It's not just a passion, because the truth be told, we don't have to do this. You don't have to do this because you want to give back, you want to serve, and you want to help other people be great. You made a decision. Hey, I'll take one for the team. But even though it's not just helping them, it's helping you as well.
Yeah. You talked about, pushing towards triumph, the sense that, you must always try and get to that point, the infinite desire to win. And I rather simply, I would sort of say, what is triumph? Like, I've never thought there is an end goal. And because once you think that you've reached somewhere, then there's always somewhere else to go. So in your eyes, when you talk about getting to the triumph, what is the triumph?
It's just, I think it's levels to this, right? There's levels to success, there's level to triumph. But when you start thinking, and if I can go back just for a moment, someone asked me once, well, why didn't you just say desire? Why did you have to say infinite desire? I said, because it keeps going. It doesn't stop. Like a desire, it's like, oh, I have a desire. It happened. I'm done. But infinite desire, you're always wanting to be better. You're always wanting to be more. And even when you get to triumph, I don't think there's a place where you actually get to where you fully win. I think you continue to win until you take your last breath, or you continue to have an infinite desire to win. And I think that's more of what it's about, because sometimes we give it like there's an end state. I don't believe there's an end state or an end game to this. It just keeps going if you want it to. I think if I stop desiring infinite desire or stop wanting to win, I think I'm probably not here and not walking the face of this earth, because every day I want to be better. Every day I want to be a different person and a better person than I was yesterday.
And I think perhaps it could be quite hard, and not hurtful, but hard just to have one goal in mind, when actually we shouldn't focus on the goal. We should just focus on perhaps the drive to get there, what you're doing along the way. So instead of looking ahead to, I hope I get to that point, we should say, look what we're doing right now. This is great right now. Let's build on this, rather than just always trying to get somewhere. We should just perhaps, enjoy where we stand.
Yeah, I will have to continue to work on that, because for me, I have to have a goal in mind, right? I just believe that if, the second part of that is great to be in the right now. And I think at the beginning, it started that way. Like, I'm going to take it one day at a time. And that was great. It helped me get out of that dark place I was in. But once I got to a place and I learned how to control my thoughts, I started to understand that there has to be a desire, but the goal, I had goals as I went. The goal was, okay, let's get off of this medication so I can function, so I'm not a zombie walking around, right? And then once I got off of that, okay, let's start thinking about what can I do next? The whole premise, when I wrote the book, it was like it took me 5 years just to get it out there. And finally it took a couple of weeks just to write it, but it took a moment. But I had goals, like this book has got to come out and it's got to be named From the Battlefield to the Boardroom, The Infinite Desire to Win. And it took a while because I thought I wasn't good enough to write it. Who's going to read it? Is it going to help anyone? And then eventually I said, you know what? This goal of writing this book has to be done now. I'm not moving forward until I complete this particular mission.
Can I ask then what your next goal is?
Wow, that's a loaded question. You sure you're ready for it? No, I'm saying that to myself. What's next? I would say what's next for me. And I believe I've accomplished a lot of things in life, from being on national platforms, having my own talk show, a television show at one point on Bravo Network, and being featured in Forbes and USA Today and all of that. And someone would ask, well, isn't that enough? And I said, compared to what, though? Are there more people that I want to reach? So if you were to ask me what's next, is to have and be in a stadium full of thousands upon thousands of people. So one of the goals now is I want to speak in front of 10,000 people or more. We're getting close to it, large platforms out there. That's one. And the goal is to be able to help, at least we've helped 500,000 women find their voice and their story. And so now is hitting the 1 million person goal, that I've actually worked with 1 million people in my short lifespan, right? And really being able to do that. And then the level of where I want my company to be. One of the ones that it is a sought after company to helping women and men build their businesses, but using their story, their life experiences and their story. And that's the only thing that I believe I do. I just took what I went through and I packaged it and to be able to help other people. And I get to do it from the comforts of my home, or I can travel, but I get to do what I love and be authentic and real about it.
Yeah. When we talk about from the battlefield to the boardroom, and I know this is a question you must get asked and have been asked so many times, but just package that for us quickly. Like, tell us what it is that you sort of learned in the battlefield that people can take to the boardroom or just to life in general.
So one of the biggest things I've been asked, like they think because of my military background, the battlefield is just the physical battlefield, and it's not. It's the battlefield in which we've been through individually. Of what happened to you in your life that was your battlefield, whether you went through divorce or, you were injured and you were amputated or anything like that. What was the battlefield? Were you neglected? Were you abused or whatever? That's a battlefield. But how do you take that battlefield and go to the boardroom? And a boardroom is not an actual physical space and place. You think of corporate America, a round table or a square table with a CEO or whomever at the table. That's not what a boardroom is. From the battlefield to the boardroom is the place where you're winning, where you make a decision of the life that you desire and you deserve, whatever that may be. For some, it may be a CEO. For others, it may be getting married. It may be having kids. So what is the boardroom in which you can strive to achieve in your life, or what are the goals that you want? So when we say from the battlefield to the boardroom is how do you take what you've been through and create something positive from it so you can share with other people? Again, whether it's the CEO within or it's just you just want a better life.
But how? How do you do that?
How? That's a great question. First, I would challenge it be more of why, right? Before we do a how, like, how do I do that? I get asked
why is just to improve. Why is to make your life better and to help people around you. I'd say the why is an easier one, but the how is the difficult one.
I think it's almost even, Benjamin, that some people are challenged with why you do a thing. Like, why did you decide to do what you do? Why would you do a podcast? It's not just the how, right? The why is the first thing that's like, oh, why would I want to do this? It's going to be more time, more energy, dealing with people, whatever. I got to get a team. I have to have a team and all of that. And so mine was more of why do this? I could just stay where I am, be in my own little, for me, miserable world. And I was like, no, I can't. My why was also my children. Why would I want them to see me this way? And then I went to the how. I think once you make a conscious decision, and not a choice, is a decision of to do a thing, I believe the how begins to appear before you. And for me, the how was, okay, let me get somebody to help me do this. I'm maybe with you when you started your podcast and all of that. You're like, hey, I'm just smart today. I know what to do. Probably not. You probably had to go get some help, right? You had to get somebody to help you with this. And so the how is finding the people that are really going to help you do a thing, because if we had all the answers, we'd be doing that very thing already.
Yeah. And I guess what you're talking about is something I talk about a lot there. It's also community. It's about reaching out to people. And I think many people, we were saying it kind of earlier in the military as well, it is about being there for other people. It is about helping other people. And that, you must also say, is essential. We go through these things ourselves, but we can only do it with other people around us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that is, I can't even imagine having the community, not having the community I have now, or the tribe that I've been able to curate, or the movement that's been started, and just having they say like-minded people. That is so important. People that want something more. I think back when I was going through that thing and I had other people that were going through it, we always talked about what we were going through at that moment, but no one at the time was talking about, okay, what does it look like afterward? What's the life after? Because PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, TBI, traumatic brain injury, was my new normal. And with the new normal, what else could I do? This is my new normal. And most folks are like, why do you say that? It's the new normal. My life is not the same as what it was before, but it seems so much better. And I wouldn't change anything to go through and understand the why, and really going through the trenches and understanding the how. I wouldn't change a thing. I would go through all of it again to get to the place of where I am now.
Yeah. In terms of moving forward, then I wonder if you have to also make a decision sometimes to leave bad influences behind. And some of them you say you may have known for a long time, but perhaps that's a decision where you have to say, I got to cut the cords there because that's not helping.
Oh, yes. That's the thing about when you discover who you are and what your purpose is in life. Maybe some people who can't go with you. I think it may have been Oprah Winfrey. She said, when you start climbing the mountain, the air becomes very thin. And if you're bringing people with you, you have on a mask, but some people are going to run out of oxygen because they can't climb that high. One, maybe they haven't received the training, or they haven't changed their mindset. And I believe as you begin to do it, then you're going to leave some people behind. That was the most painful lesson learned on this journey of, I can't take everybody with me, because not everybody wants to put on a mask. Not everybody wants to exercise a different mindset. They want to remain in the old. And I really wanted my new, and I needed those folks around me.
Yeah. We've actually done this in the wrong order, because we haven't talked about when you were younger and what happened at the very beginning. And, it's so interesting because we'll have to talk about those things now. And you had really difficult moments when you were younger. You were the youngest of 12 children. That's an immense number. Your parents, was it secondary? They didn't have a lot of education, and yet you found a desire to keep going. Can you tell us about your youth for a little bit? You were pregnant at 15. I think you were raped at the age of 17. I don't know, and you'll have to tell us about this, but that might just end people's future. And it didn't end yours, but tell us a little bit about your childhood.
Well, you've kind of shared those childhood things that I experienced, and I honestly thought it did end, because at that time, especially in America or wherever, but I know in the United States of America, I was a statistic at 15 years old. 15 having a child, 17 being in the wrong place, and that really shaped who I was as a young woman at 17 being raped. And then I had to go on and deal with that. And back then, therapy was not a conversation at the kitchen table. I'm the youngest of 12 kids. My mom's third grade education. She's a housekeeper. My dad's second grade education. And I didn't grow up with my dad. Everybody else did. He had moved away by that time. And so it was my mom, being a single mom, trying to hold down the fort of the household. I had older siblings, but for the most part, my oldest sibling is 82 years old. He's old enough to be my dad. And so at that point, he's not around. And I didn't realize at that time that 8 out of the 12 had joined the military, had no idea, because they were so much older. And so I went through this trying time as a young adult. And then later I joined the military. That was my way out. And so just as a young person trying to figure out my life, and mom, and it wasn't, she was brilliant in her own way, but it wasn't the education or book smarts. It was the way of life in the streets, and the conversations at the table were not about financial freedom. It was not about, go to school and get a great education per se. She said it, but it was stay away from boys. I didn't, right? It was do all of these things, but I didn't do what she said at that moment. And I paid for it along the way. And for many years, I was very angry at my mother for giving me so much freedom. But she did the best that she could. As I know now in my 50s, I'm 53 years old. I know now my mother did the best that she knew how, and the way she grew up. You're talking about sharecropper. You're talking about the part where slavery was still happening, but in a different sense. And so, my childhood was just different. And I joined the military, and I got a chance to get away from home and not be in a factory and not be a housekeeper, but I had a son to take care of. So I didn't have a lot of options other than I got to get out of here and from this small town so I can learn and understand that there's more out there to what I see.
You're listening to Searching for Heroes with Benjamin Hall. We'll be right back. Was that an idea that was shared by... you said 8 of your siblings did have that. So was that sort of, again, that doesn't sound like it's the great thing to know when you're young, is let's get out of here. Like, I grow up to get out of here. And so I just, I wonder then what it was being pregnant at 15, having a baby at 15. What did that feel like at that age, in that environment, when you were perhaps already thinking, I need to get out of here? Then you had a son. What was that like?
Well, I wasn't thinking about getting out of here until I got older, out of high school. I knew I didn't want to be there. But being 15, back then, I'll never forget, I had a basketball coach. So basketball was my outlet, right? And once I got on the court with the ball, it was a different story. I got a chance, even as a young teenager. And so when I got pregnant, I had my child during the Christmas holiday when Christmas used to be a 6-week break. I was at home, I gave birth, and when school started back, I went back to school at the beginning of the year. He was born in December. I went back with everyone else. And I remember one of my coaches saying to me, it was a male coach, and he said, "Hey, Davis, you're not going to be able to play basketball." "What do you mean I can't play basketball?" "Oh, we're not letting anybody who had a child play basketball, but the father who played a sport could play." And I was like, oh, this is not right. The saving grace was they brought on a female coach. And she said, absolutely not. If the young men can play, so can them. And guess where my son would be at basketball practice? Sitting on the sideline with a little small television plugged up in his little rocker. And I was a mom. Like, he came to practice. Mom would drop him off after school. He would come in the gym, and coach understood. But I was the first of so many that happened after me. So I was talked about. I was voted least likely to succeed in high school. There were so many tragic things that happened to me physically, but mentally, I still had to deal with that. And I'm still a young woman trying to figure out my life with a child. And then the rape happened. So it was a trying time. I believe if it was not for my mother and her being such a powerful force in my life, I probably would have quit school. I probably wouldn't be doing what I do now. But she was like, no, you're going to overcome this. You're going to still go to college. I did. I went to 4 years of college. Then I joined the military. So she was the person who really kept pushing me along because she saw something in me that I obviously did not see in myself at the time.
But that's interesting because she saw something in you. You were voted most likely to succeed. So what is it? Were you born with that? And again, it's the nature nurture idea. Did you have something? Did you have this resilience from birth, or did you learn it because of the things you went through?
I think I learned it from the things that I went through. I think I also inherited from my mom. Imagine, you got 12 kids. Yeah. You got to take care of them. And my dad wasn't always around. So she was the provider when he left. And I still had siblings. My sibling close to me is 8 years older. But I remember 2 or 3 of them being at home periodically, going back and forth in college and all of that. And so I believe a lot of it was from my mother because she instilled a lot of, hey, you can do this. Hey, you're not giving up. Nope, we're not letting anybody talk about you. We're not going to be concerned what everybody else has to say. And so it was her pushing me. And there were times I wanted to quit college. She's like, absolutely not. You're not coming back here. I'm like, but I want to come home. I miss my son. I miss you all. I was just like, no. You started something, and that was the beginning of being a part or having somebody in my life. You started this, you're going to complete it. So when I joined the military, of course, what do? You do not stop until the mission is complete. And so I started it got it from my mother, and then the military just really nailed the hammer or the nail on the head with that hammer. It was like, no, you're not quitting. And so I don't know anything about this quick, I got to get to it quick. I don't know anything about, it's not working, so I'm going to quit now. If I can't go through the front door, I'm going to go around the back. If the back door is locked, I'm going to go through a window. And if that is locked, let's just go on top of the roof and just remove the roof and go through it. That's how I see life. I don't believe there's anything that I cannot accomplish. If 1, I have a game plan. And 2, if I have someone else helping me with my blind spots. And 3, if I just don't give up.
You never stop. You just absolutely never stop going. I wonder about, how you then were as a mother. What you had learned and how you try to instill these in your children. And I've got 3 children as well. I know that the more you really try and instill and tell them about resilience, it doesn't always happen that way. They also need to experience things themselves. But I wonder how you are as a mother trying to pass on these messages.
At the very beginning, mind you, my oldest, I grew up with him. So our relationship is a little different. No, it's a lot different. We grew up together. We still butt heads because he still goes through hey, I wasn't the mom that I am to the younger 2. I've attempted to do that, but there's still some hang up there. And people say, I can't believe you say that out loud. So I'm honest. If you want to ask me who is the person that stresses me the most, it was my oldest son. I love him dearly. I know he loves me, but it is still I had to go through the process of being a young mother. Right. And so as a young man now, he's still going through that. With my younger two, it was I was there with them all the time. Even, when I was deployed and all of that, they grew up with two parents per se and watching them. But one thing I can say about all three of them is a simple fact. I've at least given them the room to learn and it's something about a parent. We always want to take the blunt of the hardship from them. And I learned very early, you can't, especially as a mom with boys. I just can't. And it does sometimes sit back and like, okay, you're going to have to bump your head a couple of times for you to know that when you fall, you're going to get a scratch. Oh, it may bleed a little bit, but after a while, you're going to have to stop bumping your head. And so I've given my children the opportunity to do that. I still say we have the best relationship that we could have with my oldest, and even the greater with the younger two, because they got a chance to see me go through a thing. And I was much more mature. I understood life, and they saw me serve my country for 21 years. And they always said, like, man, seeing you do a thing, their dad did this as well, but it was like just seeing me as a woman, as in their words, seeing me as a woman and as a mom do a thing. It was just phenomenal to them.
Yeah. You talk to so many people, you try to spread resilience, to lift people up. And I wonder if you think that if you look at the world in general at the moment, that we are in a world where we need to do more of that. Are we in a world which is getting worse, where people don't have the incentives they used to? Do you think we're in a world that is getting better, a world that is getting worse? How do you see it?
Oh man, there are days where I'm like, what is going on? Social media and the things that you see and the distractions that are going on, from trials over here to there's an election over here, or there's assaults over here, with celebrities. And there's so much going on. I can't say it's getting worse, and I can't say it's getting better. I just know it's happening. I believe, depending on the people who rise up to the forefront to help it, there is a need. There is definitely a need for more people to share, I would say, light instead of their darkness. There's a lot of darkness going on around. There's a lot of tragedy. There's a lot of disappointment, rejection going on. And so there is definitely a need for more people like yourself to come up to the forefront and do something about it. Instead of being a part of the problem, how do we become a part of the solution and spread more of the resiliency or the endurance, or how do you overcome a thing? There is definitely always a need for that. And there is room for us, for sure.
And that's exactly what you were doing as well. And I wondered if we could just finish up by just leaving it to you then to what is the message you really want to spread to people listening at the moment? With everything you've said, all the difficult and the incredible things that you've gone through, what do you want people listening? What do you really want to go out, listen to this, and how would you like them to go out and be after this?
I would say number one thing is, and if I were to give three, number one, it's like when you go to a mall and you've never been in the mall before, you go find the map and the map will say, you are here. And it kind of shows you the direction of where you want to go to get to whatever store you're looking for. So the first thing I would say, where are you exactly in your life? Where are you at this very moment? And being very truthful about it, because so many people put on a mask and pretending, oh, I'm okay, I'm fine. But there should be more than we're just fine and we're okay. What about having a blissful life? What about having that freedom and that flexibility just to be who you are? Because society will try to dummy that down. But where are you right now? That's number one. Number two, where do you really want to be? And it's okay to be in a place, in a space where you're not at your happiest moment, but it's not okay for you to stay there. It's not okay for every single day, day in and day out, where you're unhappy or you feel miserable or you feel like you don't have any hope. How do you get, or what do you need to do for you to get to that place where you're fulfilled in your life? And looking for people to help you find the tribe of people that are not going to allow you just to be woe is me. That was the biggest thing. I was around so many people at the time. It's okay. No, it's not okay. I can't live like this. It's a miserable place to be. And so just getting around the people who can help. And if you need professional help, please go get the help. It's okay. It is really okay to seek out professional counseling, therapy, a psychiatrist, or whatever that is needed. And it's not just, letting the family is great to help you, but sometimes strangers help you more than your own family would. And last but not least, just make a decision, not a choice anymore. Make a decision about where you want to be, let's say 12 months from now, and figure out what's missing in order for you to get there, and do everything you need to do to figure out what those missing things are, to apply them to your life so you can have the fulfilled life or the booming business or the great relationship that you deserve and you desire. From the battlefield to the boardroom is a real thing. It's all about the infinite desire to win in your life, your career, and your business.
What a perfect way to end. Dr. Sonja, thank you so much. And I just know that that message will spread to all the people you speak to. And I know it won't be long till there will be 10,000 people, then 100,000 people, and 1 million people who will be listening to you. And I know you've got that goal. You've said it. And I know you're going to do everything you can to get there. So thank you. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for having me. And thank you for doing what you're doing. If no one's told you today that what you're doing is needed and is needed for a lot of people, I'm letting you know you are needed more than you ever know. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Well, I think that Dr. Sonja just laid that out perfectly at the end. And I think that, again, so many messages that she talked about today have been talked about by other guests of ours. And that is, it doesn't matter how low you are, how bad things feel. And she was very open about the hardships that she had had in life and the down times and the difficult times. But there is always, always, always a way of picking yourself up. And again, go and talk to people. She said it herself as well, but you do get a buzz from speaking to her. You know, there are some people who are full of energy like she is and won't stop trying to make things better. And that's one way of doing it. Another one, I suppose, is way of doing it is by yourself and being a bit more quiet about it. And I think either way works as long as you try to make things better. You do it your own way. And Dr. Sonja has certainly done it her way. And I'm just grateful that she was on. So thank you all for listening, and we'll speak to you next week. Thanks for listening to Searching for Heroes. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcasts Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon